Hello and welcome to another episode of THINK.SET.GO, the podcast that is set to give you information that makes you want to wake up and move. We're trying to change mindsets, obviously, but we're trying to also get you going with this podcast. And today's episode, I'm joined by none other than Nicolette Chinomona, who has been a friend of mine for quite a while. However, she's a friend of the industry, especially within the entrepreneurship space. And I think it's only an honor to have you here. What I want you to do, right, is just profile yourself and tell us who you are.
Wow, no pressure. Hey, profile yourself. You're supposed to do that as the guest. You're just supposed to be like, nah, this is my great friend Nicolette. These are all her accolades. But okay, cool.
No, I want you to blow your own horn.
You want me to?
We
no.
don't get to do that a lot, and I think that affects how people do things. We want, yes, it's good to have someone blow your horn, but at the same time also get the confidence to blow it. You know, I've got so much I can say about you, but I'd rather have you say it.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's a very smart way of getting out of that. I'm Nicolette. I am in entrepreneurship development. I've been doing it for over 10 years. So I basically work with entrepreneurs who've got great ideas to either develop their ideas, workshop their existing businesses, as well as also doing things like running startup competitions like the Creative Business Cup.
Yeah, and I do know that obviously that's within that space. It's not really so easy for people to go with it. In the time you've done it, right, what have you seen that comes out a bit different with Botswana? I know you haven't only worked in Botswana, you've also worked with people from outside the country, but I want to gauge the difference in Botswana and other countries in this space.
Okay, so what I've noticed when it comes to entrepreneurship particularly is that in other places in the world, and I think this is due to different countries' histories, how quickly they industrialized and that kind of thing, the entrepreneurship space outside tends to be more robust. It's more developed. It's something that, people have been working on for generations and generations and generations. So for us here, especially on the continent, entrepreneurship is sort of becoming like a new in thing. I think, if we look back at our parents' generation and even our grandparents, the goal was, listen, become a teacher, become a doctor, maybe become an engineer, and, basically get a career and just work in that career. But now we're seeing that, with millennials and Gen Z, that, there is a bit of push to kind of direct us into perhaps starting businesses and becoming more entrepreneurial, especially because, the job markets are changing. They're not what they were before. So the jobs that might have been profitable for our parents are not necessarily very profitable or financially sustaining. And so now people are looking at, okay, let me do something else. Maybe I should start a business. Fine. I studied to be a doctor. Let me start my own practice. Maybe I'm not going to look for a hospital to work in.
Yeah, and I think, again, because I think the independence stage of most African countries, and I'm going to obviously zoom into Botswana, is that during that stage, governments were looking to fill positions of government, fill up the nurses, fill doctors, and fill up all the positions. At that particular point in time, our countries are over 30 years, those positions have already been filled. We are now just replacing based on retirement and death, obviously, but you know what I mean? So when we look at today, right, our parents, though, because they are from that space, they still find it risky for people to go into entrepreneurship. And I don't know if that's the case of our parents, that the generations are changing, or could it be the same? Because we still see parents carrying their kids to career days and tertiary education fairs to try and get them into particular schools. Is it because they're still afraid of taking the risks of employment?
I couldn't really speak for other people's parents because my parents basically threw me into entrepreneurship. They're like, listen, we didn't raise you to work for anybody. You need to work for yourself. You just need to figure out what exactly it is that you're going to do. And I think part of that came from, them being in careers. Both of them are in technical careers. They both started off, my mom actually started off in nursing, and then she went into programming, and now she's into the financial services. My dad started off in tech, and he's right now a cybersecurity expert. But I think they didn't want their children to do the same type of like life, in terms of the grind, in terms of, having a 9 to 5 and that sort of thing. But I will say that I feel like a lot more parents are becoming a little bit more open to the idea of entrepreneurship, because I think with their generation, somebody that didn't have a full-time job and was selling things was somebody who had failed at school. They couldn't qualify to get into a career. So now obviously that thinking is changing. So I think it's a bit of a mixed bag, but I think also is that as more parents are encouraging their children to become entrepreneurs, there is a lot of risk involved in being an entrepreneur. Okay. And then that's also led to, I feel like, changing dynamics between children and their parents, because you find that a lot of people are entrepreneurs are still living at home because, their parents are career people, but they can't necessarily afford to, when you start a business, it's suddenly making all this money that now you can just live by yourself and do your thing. I mean, that's the dream, but it takes a really long time to get there. So I feel like a lot of parents also seeing their friends' children who, let's say, decided to be entrepreneurs now experiencing these financial hardships, and it's kind of, giving them a bit of pause. They're still saying, listen, have a career, build on that, and then if anything, you can then, start your business once you've gotten quite a bit of experience later on.
All right. So you mentioned risks, right? But before we get to risk, let's understand first, what is an entrepreneur? When does someone get looked at and then be labeled that you are an entrepreneur?
Well, I think it depends on who's answering that question. I feel like it also depends on where in the world you're asking that question. Because I know in certain areas of the world, they're not going to define a person who's registered a business and making products and selling them as an entrepreneur.
That's more of a trader.
They'll be like, no, you're sole proprietor. They'll be like, how many employees do you have? That type of thing. Or they'll be like, oh, have you gotten any funding? So then, if you haven't gotten any funding, they might be like, oh, you're not really an entrepreneur. But I really believe that an entrepreneur is somebody that has an idea, takes that idea, makes something of it, starts building it, and starts selling whatever it is that the idea is. That's what I believe the core of it is. I always say that, the basics, running a business is just money in, money out. You make a thing, you sell it for more money than you made it for, you get your profit, you reinvest it.
All right. But what are the key risks though involved with entrepreneurship?
Everything.
Looking at especially...
Everything's a risk.
Everything is a risk.
It's a hellscape. It's a hellscape of risks.
So waking up is a risk as well.
Waking up. Some people don't want to wake up. What are you talking about? Everything is a risk.
But then those risks will contribute to other things, right? Entrepreneurs along the way, do they cope with this? You are an 18-year-old, finished Form 5, then you go do your degree, you come out at 22.
No one's coping.
No one is coping.
No one is coping. And okay. I think that's one of the biggest secrets when we look at the entrepreneurial space. It's very interesting because I'm in a number of groups where entrepreneurship is discussed, and I see like virtually no one's talking about mental health. And I think that's because especially the generation that I'll say, like for instance millennials like us, our information about being an entrepreneur, our goals, our idols, a lot of it is basically built off of legend. It's like, oh, I started in this tiny little space and then, now I'm a billionaire. And none of those people had ever come out and said, you know what, there were days that I didn't want to wake up. There were days when I had so much anxiety. There were days when I had stress. There were days when I turned to drinking too much. There were days that I turned to doing unsavory things. There were days when I couldn't even get out of bed. And I think that's one of the more seedier parts of it. And I've noticed that not enough people actually talk about that risk of actually just losing your mind because of how much pressure is on you.
Yeah. So then people are more about, I'm here, I drive the expensive car, I've got the big house, I've got the tenders, but they never talk about what they went through. But is that helping the mental health of other people who are finding themselves in a space where they have to go into entrepreneurship?
No, it's not. And actually, how many people have won the tenders? You know, if we look at it, if we look at the you know, the percentage of entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs that have won tenders, I don't even think they're 0.1%. You know, it's not practical. But the thing is, we also live in a social media age where, you know, people say, oh, you're an entrepreneur, therefore there's certain expectations people have of you. You're supposed to look a particular way. You're supposed to have particular status, whether it's in your community or in your own life. You know, you're supposed to be driving at least a car. Let's just talk about driving a car, okay? As an entrepreneur, you're not supposed to be a Johnny Walker. Nobody wants to hear about that. You know, they want to hear that you can, you know, go to Mug and Bean and buy people lunch, you know, but nobody really knows if that's what's actually happening. No one tells the truth. No one's honest about it. No one ever like says, you know what, this is hard about being an entrepreneur. These are the issues that we are struggling with. These are the issues that we're facing. And even the people that seem to have it together, sometimes they don't have it together. So that's why I'm an advocate of people just being honest. I'm like, listen, if everything is going pear-shaped, then everything's going pear-shaped, you know? And that's why it's important to have people that you talk to. I have a mentor, and I talk to my mentor every 2 weeks, and he's always like, so what's going on? And I'll be like, let me tell you what happened and all the chaos, because it's important for me to be able to not feel like I'm alone. Because unfortunately, being an entrepreneur is a very isolating experience. You'll find that you yourself are an entrepreneur, but maybe your friends have 9-to-5 jobs. So, you know, if you go to them and you say, yo, you know, I'm going through 1, 2, 3, even if it was easy to get a job, you're not out here trying to do that.
Your DNA
like,
doesn't go
you
there.
know, you're trying to build this amazing thing, this amazing idea. You're trying to create something new. So they're not addressing the complexity of the situation that you're in. They're just addressing the financial part of it. Like, no, just get a job. Somebody's going to pay you. But they're not addressing the philosophical aspect of having to actually give up on your dreams, give up on your ideas, which then trickles down to you essentially feeling like you're giving up on yourself. So that's why mentorship is important. And even if it's not mentorship, find other people who are entrepreneurs like you and talk to each other and have honest conversations. And also be honest with yourself as well, like about where you are, how far you're going, and how far you can actually go. Because I feel like entrepreneurs, we also don't have a very healthy understanding of what the hustle entails. And it's like, you know, it's always like get rich or die trying. And I often tell the entrepreneurs that I work with, you know, I ask some of them, I'm like, do you want to die? And they're like, what do you mean do I want to die? I'm like, no, do you want to die? Because the things that you're doing, that's not sleeping, not resting, all of this, you're going to die. So it's like, you know, you might end up fine. Let's say you won't die before you make your millions, but you're just going to use your millions on healthcare. So I don't know if it's worth it.
Yeah. And then again, at what point, right, do entrepreneurs invest on themselves? I know they need to invest in the business. I know they need to start something. But the waking up early, filling up the forms, writing up the tenders, and then after that, running around to submit, I don't think there's a point where you actually sleep fully and enjoy your sleep. When do they invest on their own health, especially mental health?
I think it's a purposeful decision, and it takes discipline. It takes more discipline to invest in your mental health than the discipline it takes to run your business. Because I feel like the discipline that it takes to run your business, things like obviously, okay, I need to wake up early, I need to have this meeting, I need to respond to this email. All of that is very physical in nature. It's tangible, so it's stuff that you can do. But now, when it comes to doing things like investing in your mental health, it's stuff that is easy because it's intangible for you to actually push to the back of your mind. But the interesting thing is that it's actually not that difficult of an investment to make. I'll give an example that a few years ago, my mentor started getting on my back about resting. He's like, you know, you need to rest. And that's something that just, you know, it's not going to be compromised on. So I was like, okay, fine. I'm going to start slowly but surely. The first thing I did is my phone goes on silent automatically at 8 p.m. At 6 p.m. afterwards, if someone sends me a message, I'm not replying. It's after hours. I had to learn to have it after hours. That means, the messages are coming in, I'm looking at my phone, I'm like, I really want, and it's just like, no, it's after hours. And I learned, okay, fine. The next thing was, okay, I take the weekends off, Saturdays, I'm not working. I'm not even getting out of the house. My mom can't even get me out of the house. I'm literally like, if there's something to be done, it needs to be done on Friday. Saturday, Sundays, I'm indoors. I'm resting. That was difficult. Doing nothing on a Saturday was so difficult for me initially. It's like I was losing my mind. Eventually, I just learned to sleep, to just eat and sleep. And that did wonders as well. And other things, because mental health is also predicated on physical health as well. Just making sure that, you eat well. Which, sometimes you're just tired and it's like, I don't want to cook. I learned to meal prep that those same weekends, I cook like majority of the food for the week so that I know that it doesn't matter what kind of day I've had. During the week, there's something, I just take it out, put it in the microwave, I eat, and
it's
I go
real
to sleep.
food.
And it's real food. It's not just like, it's bread, or like you're going to a KFC or something. I mean, I even ended up having to take supplements as well, just vitamins, and making sure that I have water next to me, So these are the small things. And then they're also very simple practices. I know, I suffer from anxiety. I'm one of those people who, my head's never quiet. It's never quiet in here. I was so surprised to find out on Twitter that there's some people who don't hear a voice in their head. Like, even when they're reading, there's no voice. It's quiet. Listen, it's quiet. Like, literally, when they're reading, they don't have an internal monologue. And I found out that the same people, if you tell them to imagine an apple, nothing there's
comes
no
into their
image
head.
that comes in their head. Nothing. And I'm like, y'all, you can't have an internal monologue. I'm like, I have a concert going on in my head all times during the day.
And meetings,
Dude, I have meetings with myself, all four. I'm like, okay, so you're the person, you're the intern, you're the boss, and you're, But I also had to figure out, because, my mind's always running, that, I also needed ways of coping with my anxiety. And mind you, trying to look for good ways to cope with the anxiety. Because again, we've mentioned.
But is it just anxiety, or the ADHD also kicks in once in a while?
It might be the ADHD. I've never been diagnosed, but then also, with us millennials, who was diagnosing us? No one was diagnosing us. It's only the Gen Zs now that they're diagnosing. Probably when we now go, they'll start diagnosing us. But so then I had to find healthy coping mechanisms, because again, there's always that temptation, to either drink, to get into other destructive behaviors. But then that stuff, when you get into it, actually destroys your entrepreneurship journey. Because even for me to start looking after myself, my mental health and my physical health, it's because I suffered periods of burnout. And I was like, nah, we need to crack this thing so we don't do this burnout thing, because this 3 weeks of not working, I'm not liking it. So we need to figure out how to sort this out. And so in terms of anxiety, I read a few books, and there's this really simple thing called tapping, and it actually works. You can do this 3 to 5 minutes, and it actually reduces your levels of anxiety.
What is tapping here? When you say tapping, we're thinking, as the men are thinking, tapping. What is tapping?
Yeah, you see now, this is why y'all are always stressed. You see, because you're always thinking about the wrong thing.
Yeah, what is tapping?
Okay, so tapping basically is that there are different parts of your body, like in your nervous system, where your body actually stores stress. So by you tapping those points, you actually release that stress from those places, So the places that you tap, it would be on the inside of your eyebrows, on the outside, under your thinking, on your cheekbone, between your nose and your mouth, between your chin and your lip, and then your chest, and then under, just where your fourth rib cage is, and then the top of your head. So just spend a few, just maybe 20 seconds.
Yeah, but not in public, though. Imagine in public.
Oh, actually,
people are going to say, hey.
I was in a government department, and I was so stressed, and I was leaning on a counter, and I was like, listen, I'm going to do this right now.
They don't look at you funny. Imagine
you're an entrepreneur. You're poor. You're struggling. You're mentally unstable. Do you care what people are looking at? Please, let us just get through the day. Yeah, so tapping definitely works. Chamomile tea also works as well, especially if you're struggling to sleep. So that definitely also helps. And also just vitamin D. It's very important because, us, especially like Black people, we don't spend a lot of time in the sun, just like, we're here in the sun. White people, they're like, we love the sun, we're going to lie in the sun. So vitamin D is actually very important for your mental health. And actually, vitamin D deficiency is actually associated as well with depression. Okay. So sometimes, you'd be like, gosh, maybe I'm just struggling because life sucks and entrepreneurship is hard. It's like, nah, you need a supplement. You just need a supplement. You need some drops. Go to your nearest pharmacy, or even go get a blood test, especially for women who have their period. Sometimes it's just anemia. Anemia is making you tired. It's making you sluggish. That's why you have to drink 10 pots of coffee and all of that. So, but it's very, very purposeful. It's important that people do take the time to, I say, bring yourself into yourself.
Okay.
Because everything is just pulling you in so many different directions. I always say that by the time I make it, I want to be sane. I actually want to be sane. And I don't want to have to spend money that, I've been, trying to get up onto, now I'm trying to pay for medical bills. Because stress also destroys your health. Yep. Not sleeping destroys your health. If you are struggling to sleep, then you definitely need to talk to a doctor because it also affects your immune system. Anything that destroys your health is going to reduce your hustle. So for people who are like, I don't have time for that. Okay, I'll tell you how to make time. You will be poor if you're not healthy. So you need to get healthy so that you can make money.
And again, imagine if you don't have money and you've already depleted your own life energy and you can't afford to take care of that.
Exactly, 100%. So I think it's also important to even do things like journaling. I do a lot of adult coloring books. They've got like
those exist?
Yeah, they do.
When you say adult, I mean, look, Nicole, you have to be very clear with your words. Like
they're not for kids. They're not Care Bear coloring.
What are you coloring?
You're coloring like mandalas, but they're more intricate. There's some with swear words on them, so you can like fill those in.
Yeah, because you say adult. The word adult also needs to be censored now because.
Sure. I'm sure somebody out there is going to watch this podcast and be like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make that kind of adult coloring book.
Yeah. It's an idea.
Yeah, so I find that to be also very therapeutic because any activity that you do that's mindful, and when you talk about mindful, it's just, centering yourself, helps to, kind of reduce the amount of stress that you have, and that ends up being better for your brain. One of the things that I often say to people is that they have this assumption that you just have to move when you're an entrepreneur. And I say, no, actually, when you look at the theory of creativity, how our brains come up with ideas is first, you have your initial moment of inspiration, then, you start thinking about the idea, you start doing some research and all of that. And then eventually, you work on it until maybe you get tired or you get frustrated. The reason you've gotten to that point of being tired or frustrated is because your brain has gotten enough information. So now it wants to enter the incubation stage. So that's when it's going to work on what you're trying to figure out in your subconscious. But if your consciousness is always engaged with working with a thing, you never give your brain the opportunity to work in the subconscious. That's why, sometimes you work on something, you can't figure it out, and then a few weeks later you get that aha moment. That's because the incubation period is over. Your brain has now said, okay, this is what we've been working on, this is the solution. That's when you then get that aha moment, and then afterwards you can then go on and finish developing the idea. So this thing of always constantly being engaged with like your business and everything business related, you actually reducing your own chances of coming up with something brilliant.
Right, so the same way that a phone works, right? Your phone, you keep using it the whole day, then later on it tells you my cache is full. You gotta refresh my memory, I need to kind of start working again. Is that how a human brain could be working in this space, especially for entrepreneurs? Because you're always like, as an entrepreneur, when you're driving, right, and you see a pothole on the road, and you're thinking, yes, this pothole is an opportunity for me to open a tire shop right there, so that when they punch, I've got a solution for them. So is that what we overload our brains with?
Well, I think if you have an idea, I'm not saying that people shouldn't, pay attention to the random ideas they have. I actually say that have a notebook that is for your random ideas. Because also if you have a thought that's nagging you, you're trying to work on this, the thought is there, and you're not like, listen, I'm trying to focus on this. Sometimes that idea disappears and you're never ever going to get it again. So I always say have a notebook that you write random ideas in, right? Have a notebook that you write ideas for your business in, so actually write, okay, this idea is for an event. So you just create like events page and then just jot the idea, then put it away. So that it's not crowding your resources essentially in the moment, but you can always turn back to it and go, oh yeah, there was that thing that I wanted to do. So not saying ignore things or just always try to have silence, but if there's something that's pressing, if there's something you want to work on, then just note it down. You'll come back to it at a later stage. But you do also need those moments of just downtime where you just bring yourself into yourself.
Right. But is there something that can be done though to help entrepreneurs cope with anxiety, mental health, stress, and all? Is there something that can be done? So we're looking at it this way, and the reason I'm asking is that policies come out. You just listen to the last budget speech, right? They've got chamas, they've got a lot of money going to creativity, entrepreneurship development. That is the government saying we need to bring in a GDP. Right, the system says we want to bring in money, we want to create employment, we want to make sure the country is stable. However, the people who have the brains and the thoughts to get that going, is there something we can do to make sure, before we even ask them to fill up that YDF form or seed out the Chama form, we've dealt with them?
Okay, so like you said, government's main role is to create stability and to increase the GDP. And I don't think that it would be realistic at this stage to expect them to figure out how to help entrepreneurs cope from a psychological perspective with their journey. It would be nice if they could, but I feel like they're not yet there at their level. What they're trying to do is they're trying to get the funding in so that these businesses can actually start. Because again, as you would know, being an entrepreneur yourself, that the biggest issue or the thing that stresses entrepreneurs the most is actually issues of funding. So from that perspective, I don't really think there's much they can do policy-wise. I mean, because I feel like it would be like, okay, so is the government going to be like, no, we're putting in an entrepreneurship policy of, less stress. It's like, wait, what? Because these are things that are also very personal. The way that people deal with stress, with mental anguish, with just emotional, psychological challenges are also very, very personal. Because then we can drill it down to saying, okay, the way that entrepreneurs experience stress is going to be different. It's going to be different based on who they are as a person. One of the things I do when I'm working with entrepreneurs is we do a personality test. Different personalities and the different combinations. All of them deal with things differently. So the thing is now to expect the government to then say, okay, fine, we're going to have a national mandate on mental health, particularly focusing on entrepreneurs, is going to be difficult because there are already other areas of society that need assistance in regards to mental health. But what I would say is that, look, at the end of the day as entrepreneurs, your mental health is on you.
But do you think about mental health though? There's bills, there is starting of the project to do, there's business plans to do. At what point do you consider mental health? Because your brain is already overloaded with trying to get this thing going.
I think that, focusing on mental health in regards to entrepreneurship would be also akin to like saying, well, people should focus on leadership principles when people become entrepreneurs because you're going to end up hiring people. You need to be a good boss and stuff. It's really stuff that I think at the end of the day is going to be really based on the entrepreneur themselves. I can't think maybe government can do perhaps awareness campaigns on stress. I'll give I know in some areas of the world, for instance, the government is a proponent of yoga. To keep people active and whatever. Even for kids, kids are doing yoga at school, to get
Tai
them,
Chi,
to be Tai Chi, to be mindful and all of that. But I feel like at this stage, the resources that the government has need to be focused on actually getting the stuff off the ground.
Yeah, but you're getting the stuff off the ground, right? So we don't have a culture of entrepreneurship. That's number one. Number two, we don't even have a culture of mental health as a people, as generally, not black people, all of them, but as Africans, we don't have the culture of entrepreneurship. We don't have the culture of mental health. So we are being told to become entrepreneurs, or we do know we are, but we grew up in a culture that says you are going to be a teacher, you're going to be a cop, you're going to be a doctor. So I think at some point, not necessarily government, but the people who are in charge of the fundings and all these things need to make it a consideration of just having a bit of that. The same way that they'll have team building. They're going to give you 25 million pula to start a project. And the next thing they hear, you bought a Navara or you bought whatever, Ford Ranger, and you're excited, you're happy, I made a breakthrough, and then you are dead. Or you are in a hospital, or you're in a wheelchair. Shouldn't they consider saying, as part of our process, we will recommend you to see a financial guiding person, and then also try and get you to talk to someone to tell, yeah.
All right, I see what you mean. Then I would say that maybe part of the program should include a mentorship component, where there is somebody that walks with you on your journey as an entrepreneur through, for whatever the duration of the program is, that says, hey, how are you doing? What's happening? I think it could be a thing where government could try and pair up entrepreneurs with, let's say, business people that are already established, so that they can, kind of talk it through. I know in 2022, I had a mastermind group, which is basically like a group of 10 entrepreneurs would meet every 2 weeks. One of the meetings was in person, and the whole purpose of it was to engage in co-mentorship, engage in accountability, engage in just supporting each other. So the process of the mentorship of the mastermind group was essentially that, you come in, tell us about your week, tell us about your wins, what great things happened, what challenges did you experience, and what support do you need from the group for those challenges that you experience. And it was just also a place for them to talk and say, hey, you know what, I've had a really difficult time with this thing. Some of the things that they talked about were personal things. Some of the things that they spoke about were obviously things related to the business. But it did give them somewhere to go where they could talk to people who are in the same space and say, this is what's going on. Because obviously with our mastermind group, for people to participate, we did have a non-disclosure agreement that everyone had to sign. Because obviously if you're telling us, about your very personal things that you can't share with your family because of, maybe they don't support you being an entrepreneur, we don't want everybody getting on Facebook to just tell everyone about it. So I think creating structures like that would also be very, very important.
Okay. So obviously those structures, right, within the system themselves, how do we get them going? Like, it sounds fantastic, but when you say pair people with, let's say, existing business people who are successful and are within the space, we don't have that culture of also collaborating. I know it's a mindset
I think
thing.
There are people.
They don't see as competition at any point?
I think there are people that are definitely willing to be mentors, 100%. I think it's just that that every single mentorship relationship has to be structured really well. Because, for instance, the mentor that I have, the way that I found him was through a mentorship program. But you'll find that I was the only person in that mentorship program that actually stuck with him. I was the one saying, listen, okay, we're putting things on a schedule. How often are we meeting? When are we meeting? And when, would have discussions, and when I said I'd do something, then I'd actually do it. Whereas the other people that had also been engaged in this program were not following up. They weren't like, hey, you're my mentor, let's talk, let's this. They fell off. And so he's still my mentor now, even though the mentorship program ended years ago. But it's because I was like, listen, I'm gonna follow through with this. So I think that there are people who do want to share their insights. They do want to grow entrepreneurs and support them, but then the entrepreneurs also need to be serious. They also need to show up.
And commit.
Because, in a lot of the things, sometimes you find, whether it's that the entrepreneur is perhaps maybe feeling overwhelmed and they're like, I can't do this, then they need to communicate. There are weeks when I do say to my mentor that, you know what? I'm a wreck this week. I actually don't have anything positive to say. I don't know if I can make this call. I'm not in the right headspace. But I communicate that he knows. And then usually he'll be like, oh, let's just get on to a 5-minute call just to, just chat a bit. You get what I mean? But I communicate that there's the stuff that's happening. There's the stuff that's happening. I'm not in a mentally okay space to actually get onto this call. I don't just disappear. Whereas I know some people who have mentors who, they just don't show up because of whatever's and then they're afraid to say I'm struggling with this, so they just don't show up, and then and then that's it. And so I do think there are people that actually do care and are committed to leaving a legacy. I feel like legacy is a big thing, especially for a lot of entrepreneurs. Everyone's wants to be, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, whatever you type, and have something that they leave behind. And some entrepreneurs who have made it really big get to a stage where they're like, okay, I have my money. That's great. Everybody can see it. Everybody knows that I made it. But then how do I leave behind people like me? And you find that with people that are true leaders, they want other people to grow. Yeah. Now, not everybody has to be a true leader. I'm just going to put it out there. If you just want to make your money, enjoy your money, you've achieved your goal, and that's it. I will never be like, how dare you not raise the next generation? And no. If it's not you, it's not you. Mm. But there are people that want to do that. But they need to be paired up with the right people, and the people that also have the right motivation. So people that commit, and people that are actually willing to do the hard work, not people that, are just like, well, you're so rich, you could do me this favor and set me up. It's like, no, I'm not here to do that. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
All right. So now when it comes to mentorship, right, there is this challenge, and I don't know if it's there, right, where mentor-mentee gender relations, right, can it be cross-gender, or should it be gender to gender? And how do they draw the line there? Because sometimes I feel there are situations where certain people will start becoming human. You know what I mean?
I don't believe that. That's my mentor is male. I kind of feel like this becomes...
But you all fall in the same thing, because it's...
Why?
You look at the record of...
They're not animals.
People dating within working spaces.
Come on. Like, people should just have discipline. Right? That's just nonsense.
Okay.
And the reason I say it's nonsense is I kind of believe... It's kind of like when people argue about whether men and women can just have platonic friendships, and people are like, no, and I'm always like, it's just nonsense. It's I feel like it's really just based on mentality, essentially, because my mentor is not an older man. He's actually closer to my age, but I look at him as a big brother, and he looks at me as a little sister. So, whenever I hear stories about, this person tried to mentor me, and not to say that it hasn't happened to me before, it has. But, I never stick around for that. I immediately just cut the cord, because I'm like, this isn't what I'm looking for. Do you get what I mean? And somebody who gets human or whatever is somebody that lacks discipline. Yep. So and then I end up looking at that person, I'm like, if you lack sexual discipline, then how are you even becoming an entrepreneur? Why should you even mentor anyone? It means you don't have discipline in other areas of your life. And I feel that the mentorship relationship, it's a sacred relationship. You're helping someone build their dreams. You're helping someone build their vision. That's a sacred thing. It's almost like raising a child. So now it's like, if somebody's like, oh yeah, my mentor hit on me, I'm like, what are you talking about? That's disgusting. Because it's like, that person has no discipline. I believe that it is possible, because I do have it. My mentor is male. I view him as an older brother. He views me as a younger sister. And even when I work with entrepreneurs that I assist, I'm always like, yeah, you're my little brother. Do you get what I mean? Like, and I don't even allow those kinds of thoughts to come in. So I think if you find yourself in a mentorship situation, is whether you're male or female, or your mentor starts taking advantage of you, that person's a predator. They're not going to grow you, because that means that they do not have the right spirit to grow you. They have the spirit of a predator, essentially. They want to take from you in exchange for what they have. And I feel like that's wrong.
All right.
So yeah.
So it's a discipline thing, but it does.
It's a discipline.
It does happen.
Thing.
So at one point, and it's the women that actually you get to worry about along the way, right? Because they get taken advantage of, even at looking for a job. Someone looks at you and deletes your CV and only sees you and wants that. So how does a girl, and this goes to the young women out there, how do they start drawing that line and saying, I'm walking out of this because it's not working, or clarifying their stance and saying, this should not happen?
I don't feel like there's a clarifying of a stance that needs to happen. If somebody injects that idea that that's what they want, then that's what they want. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
Then you just have to leave. You can't manage that. You can't manage someone else's sexual inclinations. It's not your job to do that. And in fact, if you stay in that environment, it only gives them more opportunities to end up doing something to you. That'll be very unfortunate. So it is very unfortunate that as women we do encounter these things, and it's a thing where you kind of have to leave immediately, and just say, I'm sorry, I think there's been miscommunication, and this is where I'm pulling away now. Because even if you try and say, oh no, let me just tell them I'm uncomfortable, or maybe, I'll say maybe there's mixed signals. There's no mixed signal. Like your mentor, that person is there to help you. So in fact, if there's a mixed signal from their end, they should be like, wait, something happened. I think this is a mixed signal. I'm not comfortable with this. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
So the idea that somebody would be like, oh no, that's not what I meant. I'm the type of person to be like, well, what did you mean?
Yeah.
Explain to me what you meant, like clear this up. So it's very unfortunate, but that's how I think it's also important to have a good network of women as well that you work with and network with, because they can then recommend people to you that they trust. For instance, I'll give an example that an entrepreneur that I worked with before got a call from somebody, and they're like, oh, this person mentioned you, so I wanted to call and ask you about this person. I was like, no, yeah, that person is, as far as I know, amazing person to work with. Like he's good people. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's also important. Yeah.
All right. So obviously, in such situations, right, you find that, let's say you walk out of it, right? What time is it?
It's 11:30.
So let's try and wrap it up at about 10:50. So you find those situations that they happen, right? And someone has to see that and they walk out of it. How do they build back the confidence? Because sometimes you met someone who came too hard on you as a woman, and you then start fearing that when I try to go to a man for mentorship, he's going to want this. How do they build back the confidence to say, no, not all men are like that. That one was that, but I might find someone else who's different. How do they, it's difficult to read, I know, but how do they get themselves back to saying, okay, I'm going to try to get a mentor, but that won't happen?
Well, I don't even think it's a thing of rebuilding confidence. I think it's a thing of just what's the next opportunity and take that opportunity. One of the misunderstandings that I think a lot of entrepreneurs have, and I was recently speaking to an entrepreneur about this, and he was telling me about how, he's been working on his business, but, when it comes to like presentation, likewise, he's not very confident. And he was like, oh, but you're very confident, you just talk really well. And I was like, yeah, I practiced, I just practiced. I just did it. But the other thing that I didn't get an opportunity to tell him was that sometimes it's not even about the practice, it's just doing it. It's just saying, okay, this is the moment. this is the moment now. Walk in there and do what you have to do, say what you have to say. So the same thing with getting a mentor. If somebody is there and there's an opportunity to be mentored, hi, my name is Nicolette, this is what I'm doing, I would like you to be my mentor. Whether or not you are feeling confident has nothing to do with taking chances. Even if you're scared, take chances while you're scared. Don't wait for confidence to be like, oh, I feel great today, I feel confident, I feel put together. No, there are days when I haven't felt put together. I'm like, okay, but today's the day. Like, this is the time. I have to be there. So put on your best face, walk in, say what you have to say, and then, walk out, and then have your crisis of confidence when you get home. That's my policy. If you're feeling scared, get scared when you're at home, do what you have to do in the meantime. Because the thing is, if you wait to build confidence, you might never get there. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, you being able to take chances, take opportunities is mandatory. It's absolutely mandatory. And yes, it's difficult. I mean, there are situations that I find myself in where I'm like, I'm really like uncertain and whatever, but I'm just like, this is what I have to do and I need to do it. And even though I'm afraid, yes, I acknowledge I'm afraid, I'm going to do it while I'm afraid. And you will be disappointed as an entrepreneur. You will be so disappointed. You'll be disappointed in yourself. You will be disappointed by people. You'll be disappointed by people that you are close to. There'll be so many disappointments. They will continue to pile up. It's part of the journey. But we do need to learn to compartmentalize and say, okay, this happened, but this didn't happen because of me. This happened because of them and their trash mentality or their lack of discipline, but I'm not going to let that stop me. Like, I often tell my friends, I'm like, don't kill yourself for stupid people. And you'll get depressed, you'll be anxious, you'll be having a breakdown over mad people, over people who are not okay. Like, nah, I'm not going to give them the satisfaction. No, take a beat, take a deep breath. Yes, you're angry, you're frustrated, you're disappointed. Move on to the next thing.
Find a way to move on. So now, in trying to close this, the biggest thing in reality is that, I don't know if it's rejection or being turned down, right? How does one contain themselves out of that? You were so confident, it's going to happen, I've filled up the form, I've gone for the presentation, I did my best. And then they say, unfortunately, we can't.
Rejection is part of the journey. You're going to be rejected more times than you'll get a yes, if we have to be honest, especially at a particular stage of your journey. And it's always going to be painful. There's a book, I don't remember the name of it, but it was written by this Chinese-American author who had issues with rejection. And he was like, you know what, I'm going to get like 100 no's. I'm going to desensitize myself to hearing no. So I'm going to ask people craziest things so they can say no, and I can learn to like not be fazed by a no. And he did that, and surprisingly he actually got some of the things he asked for. Oh yeah, the book is called Rejection Proof, actually. Right. So people should read that book. And hearing no is definitely something that you're going to hear it. You're going to hear it quite a bit, and sometimes you'll not deserve to get that no. Sometimes you will maybe not get the opportunity, not because you're not the best person, but because there are other existing relationships in the picture before you got there, and that there is that disappointment. There is quite a bit of heartache that occurs, because I think one of the things you discover as an entrepreneur is that it wasn't true when people told us that if you just work hard, everything will work out. You can work hard, you can do all you have to do, and it won't work out. So I think also just having a realistic expectation of the fact that, you know what, I want this to work out, I'm going to do my best. But even if my best does not work out, that does not mean that I'm not good enough. That doesn't mean that I'm horrible. Don't get into this thing of beating up on yourself, saying, oh, everything's going to fail, nothing's ever going to work out, and all of that. Don't engage in self-flagellation, essentially. Just dust yourself off, get up, and move on to the next thing. Eventually, you grow a really thick skin.
All right. So I'm going to ask you now, like, for your last message, especially to entrepreneurs. People are trying to start. it's election year. It sounds like there's money from the budget speech. People have heard of chamas. They're hearing of money going to arts, money going to sports, and people feel, whoa, I'm going to get a bit of that money, right? It might not work out. It may work out. And people are overworking themselves now because you are thinking this year, and I think it's a thing that has become a trend. This year is 2024. October, that year comes to an end. Literally on October 25th, this year will be gone. There's nothing else beyond there in many people's minds. How do they then get themselves up and capitalize on not overworking, first of all, but making sure they work for the right reasons and get the right results?
I would say on the not overworking is you need to schedule it.
Yep.
You need to, like I said, it's a discipline. It's not just something that you just wake up with and then you just feel like, oh, now I'm resting on Saturdays. No, you actually have to make that commitment. At the beginning of the year, I set all my leave days for the year. So they're actually on the calendar, so that in case like, oh, I forgot.
You're an entrepreneur with leave days. Hey, you've got luxury.
I take a week off at the end of every quarter.
Okay.
Right. And I take 6 weeks off in December. And the reason I'm able to do that is because I know that I'm an entrepreneur that wakes up at 3 a.m. to work. So by the time everyone else is, starting at 8, I've been up since 3. So I need to balance that wear and tear. So I put it in the schedule. I already pre-program my my cell phone to go into silent, so that I don't have to be thinking about it. I set these disciplines in so that there's nothing, so that I even like at the beginning I had to set a reminder. Yeah, you'll go crazy for a bit, but then you'll get over it. But once you schedule in that looking after yourself, then you know that the other days that are not part of that schedule, you're going 110%. Like you're doing whatever you want to do. You're going mad. You're jumping up. You're drinking coffee or whatever it is that you're going to do to push yourself, then you know that you can do that during those days because you have your rest day scheduled and you're going to actually commit to that. In terms of other opportunities, apply. I find that a lot of people don't apply for things because they discount themselves. And one of the things I often talk about, especially for women, I'm like, women should learn to be more audacious like men, because men are audacious. And I know
livers.
The livers are just amazing. And I remember I was listening to an HR consultant, and she was talking about the fact that a lot of women who qualify for jobs don't apply for them because they'll see maybe 1 or 2 things that they don't have. And then there'll be men who only have 3 out of the 10 things. They'll apply for that job and they'll get that job. Do you know what I mean? So I think sometimes you just need to have audacity. Just apply. You never know what's going to happen. You never know. You might be rejected. Okay, fine. You might be accepted, and that'll be great. But give yourself a chance. Don't discount yourself and start saying, oh no, I'm not the right person. Oh, I don't have this. Just put together what you can put together and then push it through.
Yeah.
And then, whatever happens. But don't look back and start thinking, oh, what if I had, what if I hadn't, or such and such a thing. And then also ask for support, whether you're asking for emotional support from your friends. Don't be like, oh, I'm bothering my friends, or, they don't want to hear from me, and no one wants to hear about my problems. You should have friends that want to hear your problems. I've got friends that want to hear my problems. If I pick up the phone, they'll listen. If they call me, they know that I'm going to pick up, and if they say I've got a problem, I'll be like, tell me all the drama. I want to hear it, because I have those friendships where we reciprocate. We look after each other like that, because we know this thing is tough. Ask for support in terms of maybe financial support. Don't be scared to ask for money. Mm-hmm. It doesn't even have to be, maybe it's not even money for to pay your rent or to pay your employees. Maybe it's you don't have money to get onto a combi. Or you don't have money to go to a meeting or something. Ask people for support. Be shameless like that. Just say, guys, I need help. Is there anyone who can help me with this? And this is what I'll do in return. Learn to exchange services and favors with people. Then there are people who need things that you have skills for. Yeah. You could be like, okay, maybe I'm not going to get paid for this right now, but I'm going to get assistance in another thing that I would have paid for. So then learn to network and collaborate in that way.
When do you manage that though? Because there are times when you do something because you are doing the favors. At some point, it's a one-way favor. The street is just going one way. When do you know you are being used, and when do you stop being used as an entrepreneur?
Okay, so there was a story that I read about a lady who would always send her child next door to ask for salt periodically.
Yeah.
And then one day her child said, "Why do you send me to ask for salt? We've got salt in our house." And it's like, no, I'm establishing a relationship because sometimes this lady comes and asks for things from me. So I also, so that she doesn't feel like a burden, I'm also going to ask for salt so that there is that reciprocity. So if you find yourself being a person who only gives, then you need to step back and say, okay, I'm going to see what I can actually ask back for, because it's actually a form of pride. That's something another one of my mentors taught me, that this thing of you just being the person who's only giving to people but you never ask for anything from anyone else is actually a point of pride, because it's like, only I can be the giver, I can't be the receiver, I don't need anyone else, I can figure out my own things, but everybody can get from me. It's actually a form of pride. So if you're in a situation where you're always giving, then you need to say, okay, we need to reevaluate this and say, okay, I want to test the relationship. I want to see if I can also get from them, and then reach out to them. Maybe it's not even for something that you need, but just something that perhaps is maybe convenient for you to get, and then see how that works out. If you see that someone is not reciprocating your generosity, then you need to cut that off. You know what I mean? Are you Captain Save a Ho? Like, what's happening here? Are you Richie Rich? Like, and I mean, when I talk about Richie Rich, it's not just about giving money, just giving your time, just giving your energy, like, there are sometimes people who will always come and just cry on your shoulder, but you can't cry on their shoulder. So they're even just draining your energy. They're draining your energy. They're draining your enthusiasm. So, it's like you need to always try to make sure that your relationships are balanced, even if you then have to create that artificial balance yourself.
Okay. All right. And then when is no a sentence?
It's always a sentence. If you don't feel good about something, say no.
Okay.
Listen to your gut. If something makes you feel uncomfortable, say no. I have 3 rules whenever I make a decision. I always say, will I be able to sleep well at night? Did I stand up for myself? Did I respect myself? If any one of those are no, then it's a no.
Okay.
If all of them are yes, then it's like, no, then I'm good with it. But don't do something that makes you feel uncomfortable, something that if you just have a really bad feeling about something, you don't always have to give an answer immediately. You don't always have to, even if someone is putting pressure on you, like, just say yes, just do this, just be like, oh no, you just make an excuse to just take some more time to think about it. But I personally typically think that whenever people are putting a lot of pressure on you and you're uncomfortable, that should be a no. But sometimes, the answer is wait, so you can have some time to reflect. Yeah.
All right. Nicolette, thank you very much for your time. And I think we'll catch up again on other things. Thank you for breaking down this mental health issue for entrepreneurs. They face it. They're in denial. They carry pride. They make mistakes that they could have simply gone to someone and said, I need help. They find themselves being, and I say this because gender-based violence is creating a lot of mental health issues for young women out there, and they end up not making it because we're trying to empower them. It's Women's Month. We're trying to empower them, but how do we empower them when they're being used and they don't even know how to say no? So I think, thank you very much for giving that confidence and also helping out. I want you to tell me what you do, tell the viewer what you do and how you can help them, because it's important that what you do also gets out there and gets to help people. I know you have events that you do. I know you've got the Creative Cup. I know you've got the Creative Spark, but I need to know what you do and how I reach out to you to get help from you.
All right, well, I'm on Facebook. You can just search for me, Nicolette Shimon. I'm sure it's going to be somewhere in the description box. And people can always reach out. I do have a lot of resources that I do offer for free as well for entrepreneurs, help them develop their concepts and the ideas. I think a lot of the people that tend to work with me either have an idea, but they don't know how to develop it into like a business model. So I also do have a free course on Udemy that people can take to figure out how to develop their business models. So yeah, I'm basically just about, let's get your idea. Let's listen to it. Let's figure out how to build it into more than an idea and figure out if it can actually make money or not. So you can reach out to me on Facebook on my business page. It'll be Nicolette Shimona, business strategist. And yeah, once you reach out to me on my page, if you want a link to the free Udemy course, I can send that to you. It's a really quick and simple, easy 1-hour course that anyone can take.
All right, thank you very much. And I like the fact that you make them think, you set them up, and you get them going. Thank you, and that's how we end THINK.SET.GO at this time. Thank you very much for making time to go through this. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and follow our pages so that we can continue to give you the information that you need to get yourself going.